pay-as-you-go apps, optimizing search ads, and an update on my Nomad tracking app.
So here we are. What is it? Week 2 already.
Yeah, the week has gone. Work has been done. More work is to be done.
Excellent.
Let's put each other over the coals and see what happens.
Hopefully only metaphorically.
Yeah, well, there's several thousand miles between us should prevent any actual physical harm.
Fair enough.
Yeah, all right. So,
Right.
if you go first. So I'm looking at our Trello board, and your first thing was to build an iPhone game. This was your target. How did you get on with what you were going to do this week?
Okay, so first I want to caveat, every time you see me looking down, it's because I have Trello open on my iPhone just to make it easier. So I'm not like looking off screen or anything. I'm referring to notes. But yes, so, okay, first target, build an iPhone game. This week was a little chaotic for me. It was a travel week, switched locations, and now I'm surrounded by multiple families and everything like that. So I lost quite a bit of time. So my first task was to basically design preliminary mockups for this game, to just kind of like give like the feel and the flavor. And I have not completed that task. I have one of my screens mostly built, but I really wanted like a 3-screen kind of like taster, like, you know, here's a screenshot that's kind of like fully in the action, and then maybe something that demonstrates a style of gameplay, and then something else that would maybe demonstrate like the customization or the expandability. And I plan on getting those done basically after we are talking.
Cool. All right. And so do you want to show the one you've gone, and is there anything you want to discuss, or do you just feel like it's too early even to discuss?
Yeah, like since I put a lot, like I didn't go back with a second level of polish on that first mock-up. That was kind of like shortly after we talked last time. I kind of just like tossed a bunch of my initial ideas in one little sketch mock-up and like threw it all in there just to be like, So I kind of want the ability to do like a second pass at it before I show it off.
Okay.
So I guess my question would be, for this upcoming week, should it continue to be just that task? I did create a new task for the following weeks, or so should it be like them hybrided together, or should it just be this first task that I haven't finished yet?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, if you will be able to do both tasks, then it should be both tasks. But there's no point kind of setting up for failure by doing something that you know that you're not going to do. So obviously estimating is like the hardest thing in software development, but nonetheless.
And we are all terrible at estimating, so.
Exactly. But nonetheless, you should have a fair go at deciding. So maybe at the end, we can go through and just see how much, work out how much you've got to do this week and how much time you've got and whether you'll be able to get it done.
But yeah, I think based on the stuff I've laid out, I will be able to do at least some of it. Like maybe it's more like this week is like 1.5 tasks and next week is 1.5 tasks, you know, kind of like distributing this one over, and then I'm back on maybe more of a slower schedule. But this game was always going to be kind of like my lion's share anyways. Like my 3 targets were never going to be like evenly split in time. It was more like this was going to be 2/3 of the time, and the other 2 were going to be smaller administrative and marketing tasks.
Yeah, sure. Okay. The work that you did you feel that it was, you don't foresee, other than time, you don't see any problems coming up? It's just a case of cracking on and
at least, like at this early stage, I think it is just time. Like it was like, you know, there's never a good time to necessarily start anything, but it was just a particularly transition-based week for me. So, and I mean, like, I'm going to have a similar situation coming up at the end of this week, and then quite a bit of stability for, you know, as far as nomading go. But, you know, that's part of the thing that we have to do anyways as nomads and developers, like balance that time when we transition. So.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Okay. So kind of an easy one for me. Let's switch over to you. So your first one in the list would have been get 5,000 mailing list subscribers within progress. That was your first target. and then your first task was write stories for this. So how did that go?
Yeah, so it went good. So I've done the task. I've written a bunch of stories. I've had a bunch of ideas. I've thought through it a fair bit. And just, I mean, the main thing is just trying to think about what's the best way to do it from kind of the user flow perspective, and then just thinking about the extra kind of stuff that I want to do, like what A/B testing and things like that. But I've kind of, and I was spent a bit of time looking at different mailing list solutions, and I just decided I'm just going to stick with MailChimp, which is what I've got at the moment. So yeah, all in all, yeah, it was pretty easy to get the stories done, and I'm kind of looking forward to getting into it now, I guess.
Nice. Do you feel like you need to revise the target or anything? Are you happy with the 5,000 kind of target of achievement?
Yeah, I don't know. So I won't really know until it's released, I guess. So I'm still happy with the 5,000. Yeah, I think think that it is a good target, because it's probably not going to happen, but it's not impossible. So
that's fair.
I feel like it's enough. Yeah, I feel like it's still a good target at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, like a lofty target, like not out of the realm of possibility, but still something good to reach for.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, I don't know, that is maybe of interest is that we're going to do, like, maybe I did say last week. So we're going to write this little guide, which is going to be part of it. So it's so we've got a measuring app, and something a lot of people ask for is how to take it's like instructions on how to take their measurements in more detail.
Right.
And so kind of inspired by it's very common on the web to give away like a little freebie in exchange for the email address.
Sure.
And so we're gonna come up with that guide, and we'll offer that up in exchange for an email address.
That's really clever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how well that's going to go, but it seems like a good thing, and it's targeted and everything else.
Nice.
Yeah.
I feel like as a developer, I have to petition you not to do a pop-up on your site for it. You know, like you can do like a beautiful like product page, you know, like you get to the page and it's like progress, like want to get our guide for amazing measurements done quick, sign up here for our mailing list, but it's nicely embedded on the web page so that it's not frustrating.
Yeah, well, my plan is, so it's within the app. I haven't actually thought about what to do on the website for it. I should probably have a story for that, actually. I'm going to add that as
well, you can add that as a supplemental task.
Yeah, so just put it in quick. So
yeah, because the second you mentioned that guide, like, you know, we have a lot of fellow nomads that we know that generate content and write books, and so many of them do that. You go to their landing page, and unfortunately, it does do one of those obnoxious pop-ups where it's like, get our free guide to, you know, doing something that sounds awesome if you just type in your email address. And there is that nice, you know, immediate aspect. Like we've talked about this on the pod before, like that, get it while it's hot or else you lose it, you know, like sign up, buy this in-app purchase, do this thing. But if you close this window, it's gone. Poof. And so I won't fault you if like the data suggests you should do it, but it'd be really cool if you could get away with like a page instead of a pop-up.
Yeah. Well, so for in the app, my idea is basically at the moment, the kind of flow of the app is if it's a day where you're taking your measurements, you go through and take your measurements. And then after people have taken their measurements is generally where I ask them a fair bit of stuff. And so one of the things is sometimes they get like a badge kind of thing at that point. And so at the moment, when they do their first measurement, they get a badge. And my plan is to change it. When they do their first measurement, it says, congrats on doing your first measurement. You know, how about a guide to tracking your measurements?
That's really clever. Also, if you say like, how about a free guide?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, in fact, I have got the word free in my thing. Exactly. And then I kind of figure that, because you don't want to ask people when they've added 100 measurements and then be thinking like, oh, how do I do my measurements? So you want to get them early on. So
that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So that's my plan, and I figure that is quite unobtrusive and fits into the flow.
I think it does. Yeah.
It will be. but I hadn't thought about the website at all. So I will add that for this week. And the pop-up thing, there was a time where I'd have been a hard no on something like that, whereas now I feel like I'm more pragmatic. But the website is kind of under Jen's jurisdiction as well, my wife, and so we'll have to agree that between us. I don't think we would do a pop-up, but I think we would probably do something like a pop-up when you leave the website, or something if there was some indicator that you'd probably finished reading, then I would probably pop it up at that point.
Right. Or it could even be like, depending on the structure of the site and the particular page a user is at, like it can always be a prominent piece of this, like a section, like a badgy section, like at the bottom of an article, or like, how there's sometimes like a floating like share bar at the bottom of like an article or something like that. Instead of that, it can be like, hey, our guide is here. Get our guide.
Yeah, exactly. We'll come up with something good, and whack it on the website, and then that means that we can. That gives me a bit of a head start on the 5,000 as well.
Yeah. Well, plus also I like that because that gives you're tapping two different audiences. Like one is tapping your progress app audience who have already used your app, which means they're highly primed to want the guide. But then you have a larger market of just people on the internet who might be interested in fitness and might come across your guide and then even download your app because of it.
So shall we go on to your next target?
Yes, let us. Okay, so my next target was to reach $10 a day in App Store profit, and this was mostly for me looked at as kind of like a marketing and advertising goal, like less about maybe a little bit of coding, but more about figuring out ways to promote my app with advertising, Apple search ads, mailing list, whatever, etc. So my first task for this past week was optimize my Apple search ads, because for my two big money-making apps, Piper and Takora, I've had Apple search ad campaigns since they were available, but it was kind of one of those like create a campaign, type in some bits, and then go, well, I guess that's working, so not really a lot of deep analytics. So I took to heart a lot of your comments from last week where I have submitted a new Takora build that inverts the name in the description, because you actually have to submit a new app build to change it. So instead of Takora daily time and task management, it is now it's like basically task and time management with Takora, something like that. So the time or the task is the first thing. And I also did another one of your tips where my little CTA, the first time you add a task in the app and it would pop up saying hey, this is my full-time job. Would you like to buy my pro features? I've changed it to now include the price up in the tapper, because you said some people were saying if you said buy the pro features for 99 cents, people might be more receptive because they just probably think it's expensive and close it.
Yeah. So I actually need to look at, I did that on World Time, and the money, the revenue from that has been going back up, but I also tweaked some other stuff. So I need to look at the kind of conversion rate to see whether putting the price in.
Sure.
Put that as one. I just need to make.
Yeah, do it. So. While you're doing that, I will just ramble on. Basically, so that was the coding aspect of this. I actually updated Takora to reflect the discussion about basically optimizing it for its searchability. I haven't done it yet for Piper because I have some unfinished code changes related to kind of getting its own CTA in place. So I just needed a few more days to get that in place, and then I will make the same update there. But then in the Apple search ads campaign, I actually that was the bulk of my time actually this week, because it is difficult to really fully grasp. I'm going to be honest, I'm not even 100% sure I'm doing it right. But what I did was I had my keywords, and then you have all the search terms. And I assume what I was supposed to do is I went in and looked at the search terms. I checked impressions, the conversion rate, and the general costs. And I picked a couple of search terms that didn't directly lead, it seems to be a search term can lead to your keyword, or a search term can just be a search term. And so I assumed the ones that were just vanilla search terms that were highest performing, I grabbed a couple of those and converted them into keywords and upped the bidding. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be done. And then what I also did was I went in and looked at the top 30 worst performing search terms, where if they had more than a dozen impressions and a I'm not sure what the TTR is, the tap through rate, I guess, if that tap
Yeah.
through rate was less than 10%. So like basically I was just throwing money away to not get any conversions. I threw all those in as negative keywords, which I think is what you're supposed to do. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know whether you're meant to do them as negative, but definitely getting rid of them is a good idea. And
yeah,
in that podcast I sent you, he talked a little bit, so I can put it in the show notes. Did you listen to that?
No, I have it queued up. I was going to do that later today. Honestly, like a lot of time in that console. The one thing that I want to kind of chide Apple for is, so they have this thing called narrow or broad matching when you add a keyword. And I think it basically susses out too. If it's narrow, it adds the keyword you said, like task manager. If it's broad, it adds a whole bunch of like similar complementary keywords. The problem here was, so I picked those 3 or 4 keywords that seem to be, or the 3 or 4 search terms that seem to be high performing, and add them to my keywords. And I did broad, but then it also added a bunch of keywords that I had just flagged as negative keywords.
Right.
And so I was like, Apple, what are you doing? You just so it wasn't, I know at first I thought just maybe keywords showed all of them and then some were negative, but it wasn't it, because I have like 30 negative keywords and then 15 of them showed up in my, positive keywords. And I'm like, Apple, what are you doing? And so you can't delete them either. So I had to go in and have 2 windows open and compare them in a list and then like pause all the crappy ones.
Yeah, it is not an ideal system. I think
from
so maybe to save you listening to it, some of the things that he said was basically, one thing was having a lot of separate campaigns. So rather than having one campaign, just because it's easier. He didn't say that explicitly, but he was definitely doing like having different campaigns, because then it's easier to turn things on and off and stuff like that.
I can see that.
Yeah, and he said what he found was working best was basically just using the keywords that Apple recommended. So like you put in the app, just go with these keywords. It's pre-select some. And he was saying that and nothing else was working best. And then he was also saying what you've kind of said, that if you have a lot of keywords and some of them aren't doing very well, that can actually impact your overall performance, because you're you're basically diluting your spend, and then it impacts everything and everything trends down. Whereas if you've got a core thing, then it's a virtuous circle kind of.
Right. And what I also did was I went in and looked at the entire history of my campaign, and I looked at my average bid, my CPT, I think is the bid, and then the like goal cost per acquisition. And I looked at what my top keywords were doing, and then I went and customized some of those keywords. So like if one was averaging 6 cents for the CPT, I set its default bid to 7 instead of like 5 or 10. And I tried to balance it so that my daily spend would encompass at least like 3 or 4 good CPA conversions, so that, because like you said, if you dilute it a little bit and then you don't have enough money left in your daily budget to actually get a good bid out there.
Yeah. And then the other thing is to use whatever the most popular keyword is that's the one to whack at the top of your title.
Right.
Yeah.
So, right. And I do believe I have done that. I'm confusing myself right now, because it's either time and task management or task and time management. And whichever one I wrote, I think is the first keyword and is the most popular keyword. So I think I did it all right. But the problem is it takes a while for these to suss out, because we had talked a couple weeks or even months ago when I had just like 10x'd my spend in the Apple search ads. And it took like 5 to 10 days for the analytics to trickle through in a way that was actually meaningful. So we'll have to like look at what I've done maybe next week and see like, are there any immediate changes from the week prior? And can we guise it? But it's probably going to have to be something we're kind of like constantly reapproaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't looked at that stuff for a while, and I should go and have a look at it.
Yeah, again. I mean, if you ever want to dive in, like I can share what I know, but we'll kind of have to just kind of like see how what seems to make sense will happen, because so often, as developers, like doing what we call like the right thing isn't always what makes you money. So.
Yeah, and I don't think there's like I don't feel with the search ads that there's any. I suppose there's moral grey areas if you were to use OmniFocus or some other trademark word.
Right.
But other than that, I don't think you can do anything evil.
Yeah.
With a search.
It's funny you mentioned OmniFocus because I think that's actually one of my negative keywords. I had like a 0% conversion rate for people who searched OmniFocus. So I'm like, get that out of there.
Yeah. I actually don't think that there's necessarily a problem with including those with paying for that. But so like if people are looking for OmniFocus, it's a funny one, isn't it? Like
I know. No, I know. Yeah. It's more like the thing is like there was 105 search terms, so I had to cut something. So I'm like, you know what? I can't know without trying. So I tried to grab some popular things and put them more popular. I tried to grab some negative things and make them more negative. And hopefully like there will be at least some incremental improvement. And if there isn't, I can try upping my ad spends. You know, I'm still keeping the ad spends quite low so that like, you know, I don't lose like $50 tomorrow. But yeah,
so when should we check in on this? How are we going to do that? So do we want to check in next week or 2 weeks?
I think we should. I think a week is enough time. Like 1 or 2 days, because of weekends, weekdays, it can be a flux. But I think across a whole week, like I should be able to at least say, okay, how was it last week? And how is it when we're on this call next week? There should be some difference because I made changes everywhere. Something should change.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool.
And, all right. And
what do you have something for next week for that?
I do. And it's a good one. It's actually one I've had on my list for a while. So Apple is updating its iOS App Store pages for iOS 11. You probably already know this. And there's a bunch of little things. New space restrictions on the app name, subtitles for the listings, a few other little optimizations here and there. Like there's an entire website that details them all that I haven't read yet. So my task for this coming week is to go through, at the very least for Piper and Takora, and like fully trick out the App Store pages to take advantage of iOS 11.
Yeah, okay. Well, I find this stuff pretty scary. Like, I think it's good, but I find it scary as well. So, especially when we're talking about putting keywords at the top. And
I know.
You've only got 30 characters now, but you've got the subtitle and.
I know. And so now we have to say, like, okay, if Takora's App Store name is like time and task management with Takora, 1, that's a little bit more than 30 characters. 2, what the hell is the subtitle then? You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. So we will. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear how you get on.
Yeah,
for sure. But I will be interested. And have you got videos? And do you plan to make more videos?
I don't have videos, and I remember looking at yours, and I think yours are a pretty good idea. I don't want to promise them in 1 week, but if I can think of a fun way to do it, similar to how you have done it, where it's like kind of a little walkthrough with some background music, I think I might try because I think it is really valuable. Because now you can do 3. So the thing I want to try, which you haven't yet, is the reason I never made a video for progress is because half the screens are in landscape and half the screens are in portrait. Right.
And so you can't do that really with the one video. And I don't know, now you can have 3 or 4 videos. I don't know how it's going to work if I have one video in portrait or whether that's still not possible or what. But that could be quite good to be able to show some of those features.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally right. So yeah, it'll be cool. We'll see where I'm at. And Nick, definitely we'll have to wait till like iOS 11 comes out to actually see a lot of fruit born from that. But that's all about to get more sales, you have to have like the beefiest, sexiest, most ideal version of your App Store page. And since they're giving us all these new things, it makes sense to get on it now.
Yeah, and the current rumor is it's 2 weeks until.
Jesus, is it?
Yeah, so because they normally announce it, because it'll be. Well, the current thing is that it is 2 weeks today will be the iPhone announcement thing.
Right.
And from memory, they normally announce the iPhone on the same day as they release.
They do. iOS. I always thought iOS came a little bit later, but you're right. They might. There's literally and iOS 11 is available right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think is part of it. So.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks, not long.
So this might be perfectly apt then, because I'm never. I am always a little slow on this. Like whenever there's like an Xcode beta released, and it's like when you added what was it, like the Force Touch or whatever to one of your apps like really early on. Like I have not done that, so I wanna be better about the early stuff.
Yeah, I think well, there's definitely sometimes advantage to doing that. Apple likes seeing that, and so
Yeah,
in some ways, I wish they did more with it. But on the other hand, I think you increase your visibility to Apple if you're doing stuff like that.
that's true.
Um,
That's true. But
so
cool.
yeah, that looks like a reasonable thing to achieve this week,
Excellent.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think that one, like those are all pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of variability in those.
yeah.
So
Uh,
let's move on to your second one. Your tip jar.
Yeah, so this was the one I actually wanted to talk to you most about.
Great.
So the goal or the target was to create a generic tip jar and then add an implementation of it to World Time Widget. And I put for widget themes, but I don't.
Right.
Yeah, so it would basically be yeah, it could still be the widget themes, but the main thing is to add this tip jar, and the idea is that yeah, people can allow people to give money more than once, because at the moment
Right.
it's kind of a tip setup, but they are non-consumable. They're the kind of IAP where you can only do it once, basically.
Right. Right.
And
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 it's
so
great. Like for anyone who hasn't seen it, like the non-consumable tip donate thing is really cool.
yeah, so it is, but I think consumable would be even better, and letting people just like they do it once and then um, they can do it again if they want to.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so my kind of goal for the week was to write stories,
Yep.
which in the end, oh yeah, I did write stories. I was going to say I didn't write stories.
Ha.
I wrote stories, and then I've kind of done a sort of API diagram kind of thing for it. Um, but the thing that I wanted to talk to you about was a kind of idea I had kind of just after I'd finished drawing this all out,
Nice.
which was that I was kind of thinking of trying to kind of combine, make like a sort of, make it sort of subscription, but not kind of thing. So I don't,
Mm.
this definitely can't be subscription
Right.
because no one, just the word subscription will just turn people right off. So that's totally
And
fine.
you can't and you can't and you can't do anything about that, right? Like that is like
Yeah,
Apple language.
yeah. I'm totally fine with that. But what I was thinking was, say I add a feature tomorrow, and I say you need to have given a tip to
Hmm.
use this feature. Then say in 6 months' time, I add a new feature, and then I can say you have to give another tip in order to use this new feature. And so my kind of idea was that your tip would kind of give you, so it'd be sort of like a license, but it would
Mm.
be, and sort of like how Sketch works, only less so. So like core, because you can't stop people from updating. So like core
Right.
updates would do, but features you could say this feature was in the code. You could say, so at the moment I have like just probably the same as you do. You just have a flag which is like have they upgraded, yes or no. But
Right.
instead it could be have they when is their kind of credit due, or you know
Right.
how, so say I give a $1 tip, that gives me 3 months. Say I buy a $10 tip, that gives me 3 years, say. and so
Right.
and so it could be then when I add a new feature in 6 months, it can be like, hey, why don't you give a tip in order to use this feature.
Right.
And
So yeah, I guess you could easily track that where if you keep a kind of date flag for when each feature is created, and then like an array of date flags of when they've tipped, if the dates coincide enough, like, oh, okay, so because you would want to make sure if someone tipped to enable a feature and then 6 months pass, that that feature doesn't disable or anything.
yeah, exactly. So it would be all so once you've given a tip, you get features, you get all the features that were there when you gave the tip. So you
Right,
keep
right.
forever, you keep whatever you thought you were buying at the time, but any new features you might have to pay for again.
Yeah,
So
this really is the sketch model. It's a good one.
yeah, so Sketch, it's kind of is. So Sketch, yeah, Sketch, you can carry on using it. It basically has to deal with the fact that you can't stop people from upgrading. But then the other difference
Right.
is that I the bit that's, so I think technically there would be some work, but I think it would be totally doable to do this
Mm.
technically. But the bit that's more difficult is how to. It's more like the wording and the sales and stuff like that. Because I
Well,
don't.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, even though like to us, what you're talking about is like kind of like ad hoc subscription, like pay to enable, but to
It's
the
kind of
user,
pay as you go, basically, isn't it?
exactly. And that is genius. But I think to the end user, it could be like I already thought in my head, like TTE, like tip to enable, so like if you're in the list of, like in the list of settings, it can say like, optimized weight management or something like that. And like if you tap to go into it, it'll be like, this is a pro feature, tip to enable it. And if they do, everything else will just be enabled too. But then like 6 months, like you said, if you have another feature, if they just go into it, the tip to enable screen can just restore itself.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
the
like
bit that
for
I'm
them, yeah.
the bit that I'm stuck on is my instinct is that I wouldn't actually explicitly say any of this. So I wouldn't say you're by tipping you are
Right.
buying 3 months or 6 months or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
It
I
would just
agree.
be you get the tip and then it prevents it from being they give a tip and then they'd feel less aggrieved if like the day after they give a tip a new feature comes out.
Right.
And so it would still be tipping and then it would just be kind of keeping a note of their tip and being like, oh, you're a good tipper. I will let you off, or not let you off. You still get these features for some amount of time.
Right. Well, because like
but I don't know how you
feel
word
like,
that, or like how you word the second time where you say, "How about a tip in order to use this feature?"
I think what you could do is you'll probably want to write stories for these, but there's now a defunct like CocoaPod that I had used where it was release notes. And so what you could do is something like, okay, say you release a feature tomorrow. When the person loads the app for the first time, it could be like, hey, all new feature, maybe a little banner, little badge, little something to announce it. And if they tap through to it, you have the tip screen, like you said, like tip to enable this feature. And then if in a month you release another feature, you still promote it in the little banner and they go to tap on it and the feature works because they're within the like period that you had said. But then like in 7 months, if you release a new feature, it's still banners. And when they go in, it's like, oh, you need to tip to enable this feature. It'll just be like, they'll just think that some features are paid. It'll almost be like they won't even understand the mechanics of it, but there won't be any like shiftiness to it because it'll be kind of like they pay every once in a while, but so many new features seem to come in for free then.
I don't want people. So one nice thing about it is they don't have to pay if they don't want the new features. There's a few nice things about it. So one thing is you only have to pay for features that you actually want.
Yes.
You only have to. You're only paying for things that have been done. So that's one of the things that really bugs me. Is like, how do you charge people? How do you keep doing new things and then charge again for the new things?
Well, you know what you could do? You could just literally like the consumable tip is a great idea. This is almost like an aside where you're talking about like feature-based in-app purchases, like if I can see how you would feel squirmy if someone tipped you a couple dollars and then you released a very small feature and kind of paywalled it. But if you're talking about like juicy features, like good stuff, you could just have each one cost a different amount of money. And like when you release them, they can pay for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a way of doing it. But then, I don't know. I don't like that as much as, for some reason, like it makes it more difficult to divvy up the features. So I think my concern is like, will people be confused by the fact? Will it be like, oh, I gave a tip and now I have to tip again? Will that piss people off or not? I don't know. It shouldn't do if it's been like over a year. But I guess.
Well, you know what it could be? Should you like delete everything I just said metaphorically and let's introduce like some concept of gratitude. Like if someone tips using your tip jar in the app of any amount you deem acceptable, then you can say, hey, you now have 3 months of my gratitude, basically. Like it can even be a setting somewhere like gratitude timeline, 3 months. And it means that like all the features within that gratitude period are free. And when the gratitude runs out, you start paying again.
And so do you think, so that, I guess that's the question. Is it better to tell the user what's going on? Or is it better to not tell them? So is it better? And then do you tell them like before they tip or after they tip?
Right. I think, the thing is, me as a developer, like I want the truth because I know what you're doing anyways. So like if an app is deceptive, like you and I can both call it on it. Like I've used apps before, like an app that like scans in receipts where it'll be a paid app and then the pro features that are like really important, like optical character recognition, are an additional pro feature. And you can see when they nickel and dime you kind of in a crappy way. So there's that. But then again, regular people don't necessarily work in that. So I think you just need to do whatever tells the story the best way, right? Because if you're honest in telling the right story, your users will want to support you. And it's not about obfuscating what you're doing. It's just, if the best way forward is to introduce the tipping as like mini pay-as-you-go subscriptions, then you do it. And if it doesn't make sense, like you rebrand it as more of like feature unlocking.
I think my goal so I had a goal for this week, but I think I'm going to change it or a task for this week. And I think instead of so my task for this week was going to be to where is it? So the blue one. So to basically create the outline of the project. Maybe I'll add two. So it was to create the outline of the project. And
you could do that, but I think you really need stories here, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think I need mock-ups of different ways of messaging. So,
because that would be a great thing for us to discuss next week. Like if you're like, okay, I came up with like 3 possible paths forward for this, and then we could debate them.
So if I mock up 3 different time widget tip jar, sketch.
Because this might be like, there's a lot of things where we can talk it out loud, and then you look at it in an app or in an app mockup, and you're like, oh, never mind, I was totally wrong. That makes way more sense.
What's going on?
Although I will say, like personally, I'm kind of really intrigued by the idea of like gratitude. I know I'm pulling a little from the Hellbent podcast where they do gratitude checks at the end, but like I like the idea that if I bought your app for free and I tipped you, I had a certain amount of your gratitude, which resulted in like perks for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. No, definitely.
It's actually like kind of like a power up, isn't it? Like, like Fireball Mario, like you have an extra set of abilities for a short period of time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think the idea I really like. It's just the best way to present it and without kind of pissing people off. Make it something that people are really happy to be part of, rather than something that people think.
I think as long as it's 100% opt-in, like if the core app works and they could 100% ignore whatever you do, I don't think you have any problems.
Yeah, and that's my goal, and that's what I like about it, is that it's flexible, and people, and then if there's a feature, if there's features they don't want, they don't have to pay, and then if there's features they do want, they get all the other features anyway. So it feels kind of nice, but I'll work on the messaging and decide the best thing for that.
I like it.
Okay, cool.
All right.
And so your next goal was 20 patrons on Patreon.
Yep. So this one is a little more of a slow burn. So to start off, my first task was to basically just like re-up some sharing on social media, because in the past few weeks, we haven't really posted that much about actually like joining the Patreon. We've mostly posted about our podcast, obviously. So I basically just did like some like initial low level groundwork to like kind of restart the thing. So I did like a nice little Patreon post that was like, hey, thanks for everyone's support. Let me know if you have anyone to share with. And then I did just a series of tweets and stuff to basically like link to what we're doing right now, like this mastermind and the podcast and the new season, and then to our Trello board and everything. And this was all mostly just set up for what I wanted to do this week, which is based off of your recommendation last week, is to kind of focus on promoting the mastermind reward tier on our Patreon. Because I did some solid research on masterminds, and basically like there's a low income approach and a high income approach. And TLDR as low income approach doesn't seem feasible because it's all about having big groups of people. So it basically means like the good masterminds are smaller grouped. And I mean, at a minimum, they're a couple $100 a month. And some of them are even a couple $1,000 a month. So $50 a month, which is our current level if you back our Patreon at $50 a month, you get in on a monthly chat with me and you. That's basically a deal. Like that is like a discounted mastermind thing. So I think it should be a very good thing to be able to promote. So with those few tweets in place, so I'm not just coming out of nowhere, from not tweeting for a while and stuff like that to this, I will now I have a checklist of things I want to do basically. And this is why my task last week wasn't more wide reaching. Like I didn't want to like post all over Facebook and reach out to a bunch of people and then reach out again. I wanted to only do it once. But my quick little mini list in that task of promoting the mastermind was basically like, I will make a public Patreon post about joining us as a mastermind so that the Patreon post can be shared, because most of our Patreon content is private. I will then share that post on social media, like, fellow indie app developers, designers, anything in between, like, come join us. Like, we want to help you with stuff. We want you to help us. Like, and then I might actually, like, I know quite a few devs out there, and a bunch of them are nomads. So I might see if I can reach out to some explicitly and be like, hey, did you want to join us on this? And then I was probably going to like do a few simple little things like pin a very poignant tweet about it. And I was even thinking about adding some kind of a CTA to the App Collective website, because right now we had recrafted it as a landing page, like, hey, welcome to the App Collective. You can subscribe to our podcast. You can join our Patreon. But I might be like, hey, fellow designer, want to join our mastermind? Like kind of like a special offer or something like that on the site. But I left that as optional because I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, well, definitely copy me in on if one of them, or send me the message you're going to send, and I'll think if there's anyone who I can think of, or anywhere where I can post it. And
will do. I'll make a comment of that. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Like, what do you think? Do you think that kind of makes sense going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think it does make sense I think it does make sense. And so I don't know whether we will get any results right away, but it does sound like I could see that we will. I can see that we definitely will. Like, so
exactly.
It's definitely a good thing to head towards, and I think it makes the most sense.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, if we got even two people to do that, we would double our current Patreon revenue, and we'd have two cool people to talk to. Like, talking to other people about their projects will make us better.
And so, I mean, it's something not to do, but to think about is even whether that is a Patreon thing or whether that is just something not in Patreon. Not because Patreon is bad, but just because it's more like Patreon is. I don't feel, to me, Patreon, that isn't the kind of thing that Patreon is for, like for collecting money in exchange for services. So I think definitely stick with it for now, but maybe we think about if we just throw up a one-page landing page and take money in some other way.
Just remember, Patreon is about a service exchange, though, because most of them are about like there's a ton about generating podcasts and people who do regular content creation, YouTube videos, web comics, things like that. And a lot of the perks really do line up with that. Like I actually back a bunch of people who do podcasts, and some of the higher level perks are conversations with the people. Like smaller perks are sometimes like a one-time conversation, like 5-minute chat with Roman Mars or something like that. And then some are recurring. So this actually wasn't even my idea. This was like lifted from other campaigns. So I do feel like there is a precedent for it. So I think it would work. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, excellent. Let's see if we can.
Because it would be great for us. Like, because like that was one of my bigger parts about doing a lot of this stuff through Patreon, was to have a little bit of bonus income before you and I finish apps. Like, if we had $1,000 a month in Patreon, and it takes us, these 3 months to build these 2 apps we're building as part of this mastermind, we're going to make, $3,000 while we're building those apps. It's not just like, the payoff after we have marketed and monetized and wait a few weeks to see, what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds good.
Cool. And so that was it for that. So let's move on to your final one, which is your biggie. Your target was to release your really cool anonymous movement tracking app that is not creepy. It's about like giving yourself a log of where you've been in kind of a macro sense. And it looks like last week, you finished your task.
So my keyboard has gone crazy because what I wanted to do was bring up. How am I going to stop my keyboard from being crazy?
If you need something in Trello, I have Trello up on my phone.
It's what I wanted to do was share my screen and then talk.
Gotcha.
So give me.
Yeah. Well, while you're doing that, you got it?
It seems to be better. I think it's a Bluetooth thing. God bless Bluetooth.
I know. Just getting these suckers connected, sometimes a hassle.
Yeah, so that's...
But yeah, your task for this past week was similar to your other ones, which was write stories. And it looks like you completed it.
Yeah, so once again, I didn't exactly write stories, but instead I did mock-ups for this. I felt like it would make more sense just to go and do the mock-ups. So
you don't have to justify that to me. I love the mock-ups.
If I do a screen share...
If you do a screen share, your face should disappear instead of view.
There we go. So do you see
my
screen?
I am viewing your screen. I have no idea if the video you're recording is also showing your screen, but I think you and me are at the top now, and your screen is down below.
Yeah, we've got to assume that it is recording the...
Sounds like a plan. Okay, cool.
So this is obviously pretty rough because it was mainly to think out the features rather than to do anything, than to be what it would actually look like.
Of course.
But it was trying to kick a few, kind of thought tab-based layout, and then this is the kind of, this wouldn't be blue, this was selected when I took a screenshot of it, the Nomad tracker bit there.
Yeah, no worries.
But it's kind of keeping a tally of countries. I thought was quite a nice idea. That's kind of like a nice badge kind of a thing,
I like that.
A lot of people want, and so that's like a nice feature. And then import countries. So this is something you've talked about before. So you could, and there's a bunch of different ways of doing this. So you could pull from Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
Right.
It actually occurred to me that I don't know whether it would be a better way, but you could pull from photos. So
you could.
Most people would have taken photos in most places they've been, I would have thought. And so you could actually pick up all the countries that you've been to just from interrogating the photo library.
Right,
and actually have the code to more or less do that. So that would probably be, would be a good thing.
That's great.
So that will be what import countries would do. Then you've got your current, how long you've been in Thailand for, handy for the visa stuff and things like that. And then just a list of places where you've been and how long you were there for. And this,
I like it. So the flag will kind of represent the country you're in, right? And then the text is actually the city. So you kind of get a little bit of both. Yeah,
exactly. And the flags would just be an emoji, and then the sketch template had these as like little rounded squares when they wouldn't crop their flags like that.
Right.
Was just I was just trying to be quick with it. So that was the idea, was just country and then city. The kind of city thing, I'd have to see how well it worked, because I know that city, not because city with like some of the geolocation stuff, like the definition of city, or so you've got like these kind of 5 or 6 levels of location, but it should be possible.
It should be,
and if
I would recommend to do like whatever easy things Apple gives you. Like hopefully you don't have to like define your own geo fences or anything.
No, but it would just be like, will it give you London, or will it give you like kind of like Camden, and stuff like that? You would assume that it will give you London. You'd be able to say London.
Like hopefully it's not like, oh, you're in Shoreditch. Oh, you're in Greenwich. Oh, you're in Canada Water.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be okay, but that would be my only hesitation with that, basically.
I think it looks good. I like it. On the map screen, what are those? Is it just straight up pins where you've been? Is there any kind of grandeur scale? So like, in your first mock-up, it says you've been to Playa del Carmen for 90 days and in Chiang Mai for only 14. Is there something to reflect that difference on the map screen?
No, there isn't. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that, but that is a good idea. So what I had thought of was doing kind of lines between the places, and then having the lines kind of be, so the most recent be the brightest, and then they kind of somehow fade out so that your oldest lines are
there's my Indiana Jones thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought about doing the Indiana Jones thing, like, I don't know, when I think about that is really cool for one journey. When I think about showing 5 years of stuff as an Indiana Jones journey, I think
that moves way too slow for our lives.
Yeah, well, or if you do it really quick, it's just silly, isn't it? So,
well, like, imagine you're in Asia and you're doing a visa run, and it's like dun 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 dun. Like, it's just going to be like bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, and there probably is a cool way of making a video or something. You can query the photo library, get photos from that place, pull out the ones that have been starred, or I'm sure there's good stuff you could do to make a nice video. But
yeah, honestly, I love it. I think it's definitely a great beginning visualization. My only big thing that I don't see that I would really want me as a personal feature is, what were you thinking in terms of export/sharing? Like, if I would love to share this on Facebook, for example. And so, like, I'm trying to think of, like, what would I want it to share? Like, would it be like a map with like the pins in the little paths you said? Or would it just be like, I've been to 12 countries, here's the little icons? Or like, what kind of visualization would make sense to kind of like share or brag?
Yeah, so I don't know how many I would do out of the gate, but I had ideas for, so if you assume that I could just click my hands and implement all the features tomorrow,
of course,
then the ideas would be, for the first screen, if you share from there, you could share it as a GPX file. Which is
I see. Sorry, wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, and then iCal. So like, make a calendar. I don't know how the iCal would. I'd have to think about that one more. But maybe something where you could just fill a calendar with it from the past, I think would be quite nice. Some way of doing that, and then CSV would be an option as well.
I think that's great. I mean, and honestly, as long as you're just storing the data in the app in a way that allows you to make some kind of visualization later, should you wish to do so, easy.
Yeah, exactly. And then from the map one, you could either share it as an image, or you could do a server-side thing and get a Google map, like, put all the pins onto a Google map, and so that's obviously again a bit more work, but I think that's also then kind of shareable, and people would like that.
I like it. Yeah. No, I think that's cool. Like, I can see so many things, like, where it could be like where I've been this year, and it posts to Twitter with an image, like with your cool little paths on like a little map.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that would be pretty nice. And then I had ideas for things like, it could automatically post to Facebook when you change country.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that wouldn't be for me, but would be for some people maybe.
Would it? Okay, so it says, if you add countries, it could pull from, like you said, photos, social media. Is there some sort of element when you first open the app and it's empty that it would start tracking itself in the background?
Yeah, so it would bring up, it would do like the lowest energy, I forget what it's called, but there's the level of geo tracking where it just tracks where you change cell tower. And it would just do that, and you would just leave it on all the time.
Cool. And that's, I presume, in the settings screen where it says tracking status.
Yeah, exactly. And then in there, you could click in there and get a bit more detail about, it could explain that this isn't really going to use any battery because it's only doing when you're changing towers, which is...
I like it. Yeah, because you're right. Like, I originally was thinking there would need to be something on the main screen that's kind of like a ping or a radar that's like, hey, tracking. But that implies that it's like chewing up battery cycles, and you're right. That doesn't really use almost anything.
Yeah. So, maybe it should have some kind of live... Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe there should be some kind of indicator.
I guess you could at least say on the main screen, you could at least say like tracking is active or tracking is enabled.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can put that in.
But I like this a lot. This is definitely a strong start. Like, you don't need much more than what you've shown here for a first version, for sure.
Yeah, and then the other ideas I've got is more integrations, and then something like I don't know one thing might be like, Peter Levels has like one of his projects is something that shows like people's location, like you can say this is where I am for like meetup type things. So I could say, can I hook into your API? I could also
That would be
build my
cool.
own thing, or we could do some kind of 7 and 7 type thing. Or
Honestly,
I
I've
don't
thought
know.
about doing something like this for 7 and 7 since I built the first app. So
Right.
like I would definitely be open to figuring out some way to do that. Yeah, like for basically meeting up when it's not at the conference.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, exactly. So that, and I think that would be a nice thing. And then thinking about how to actually monetize it
Right.
is interesting. And I don't really have any
Well, you know what it could
any
be? It could
clear
be something
ideas.
super simple like you don't have to enable any kind of import in this first version. It could be like you could
Mm,
open the app and it just tracks by itself. But if you do your tip or like a pay as you go subscription like we had talked about earlier, that
yeah,
enables import from Facebook, or
yeah,
even track from Facebook because once you get the authorization as an app in Facebook, you could routinely ping like their status updates and their photos and pull new locations in automatically.
yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, that's actually a good idea. So putting the import countries behind the kind of paywall,
Yeah.
um,
Because
that
that's a
makes
pro
total
feature.
sense.
Like to me,
Yeah,
a free feature is here is an app you can use it from this moment on. But
yeah,
if you wanna get data from the past that wasn't in this app, like you're going to have to help me out a little bit.
yeah. That's true. That's a good idea. I like it. So that's definitely a starting point. And
That is a great starting point.
I feel kind of, I feel like Product Hunt would love this, and like I feel like it would be quite easy to get some publicity in the right circles for
Dude,
something like
seriously.
this.
I mean,
Maybe.
and I would probably find a way to promote this in 7 and 7. I mean, like I would promote you and it obviously, but I would want to find a way to like use your app in conjunction with our app?
When is 7 and 7 now? Can I, maybe a goal is to launch this for 7 and 7, or do a
You
beta of
totally
7 and
could.
7?
I mean, the week is October 3rd through the 9th, so we've got about 5-ish weeks.
Yeah. So I could certainly aim to do a beta by then.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, what we could do is, I mean, you can add a ton of people to iTunes Connect now, so it wouldn't have to be App Store ready. We could always do like an iTunes Connect beta and just opt in people if they wanted to use it.
yeah. And then we just ask people to turn it on and start tracking,
That would
and
be
then
cool.
and that's it. And then they just leave it
Yeah,
on, and it's not using their battery, and then they're
yeah.
building up.
Oh, you should probably add something somewhere, like if you can have anonymous usage statistics, because this would be hella useful as a community-based tool. Like, I would I would love to know where like everyone in your app is
Mm,
throughout the year. Like how people are moving around the world and
mm.
everything, but in an anonymized way, so that it's not like violating who they are or their privacy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, yeah. I'll think about that because part
Yeah,
of my thing is to make this like a private thing.
yeah.
Um, but on the other hand, yeah. So
Well, if we
yeah,
had a way, for example, this is far too much for one little version, but if like all the 7 and 7 attendees had this installed and there was a way for us as a unit to see where each other are going, both
mm,
individually and in aggregate, because we've kind of all agreed that like, if you join like the 7 and 7 Facebook group for year 2, you've kind of agreed that you want to know what everyone is doing. That would be super cool to see like after the conference, where is everyone moving? How are they interacting and stuff?
yeah, yeah. And so we just need to find an Android dev at 7 and 7 to get
I know.
the.
I know. It's gonna be one of my goals for year 3 to find an Android dev. And if I find someone good, I'll see if I can get them to build versions of your app too.
Yeah, I mean theoretically you could do this on the web, but
Yeah.
it'd be the background tracking that wouldn't work on the web, would it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That would be tough.
yeah, so there you go. So
Nice.
that is this week, or yeah, is the week
Yeah.
from the past, and then for the future, what have I got? So basically thinking about the back end, like the data model.
Yep.
So how is and then looking. So I've got an app called Tagger, which
Yep.
has sort of similar features, but it's more specific. So it's more like constant tracking rather than it's more
Right.
like to the meter rather than to the city. So it's to
Right.
look at that and then think about how that would work. and then maybe think about syncing and stuff like that. So basically, kind of think architecture-wise and data model-wise, kind of come up with something so that I can build a data model that will work. And so basically, choose whether to use core data or not and stuff like that.
Right. I think that makes sense because honestly, like these are the annoying decisions you have to make first. Because if you move down a little bit and you made a choice like chose to use core data and it's not going to work out, you have to go all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, exactly.
I will say that what I've seen like in aggregate, I've seen a lot of people say no to core data just in general, but just because like it has been at times like unreliable or it doesn't exactly fit the custom needs of particular apps. But that's kind of that's not case by case. That's just like, reading Daring Fireball for years and like stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, we can, maybe we would talk through it next week when I've made my decision, but I saw Realm coming up a fair bit, and that has like an automatic server-side sync kind of.
Right. Is the point thing. Not to build your own backend for that piece?
Well, yeah, you're right. So it would be better to have. Yeah, no, you're right. So Realm,
because we could build like I know how to like I've started building Rails apps that deploy to Heroku, and it's about as easy as it can be, I would say. Like I am a UI front end dev, and like if I can build a back end, like anyone can. And so like it's definitely a possibility.
The bit that always bothers me when I've looked at it is not building the back end or the front end, it's building the sync between. It's like the sync between them is the bit that seems scary. So that's the bit that, and that's something that I've wanted to do, but I've never gotten around to. So this maybe will be the project for it.
Well, if you need or want, like I have like the 7 and 7 app, for example, I built a custom Rails backend that's deployed on Heroku. I have a fully customized JSON API with authentication that I built from scratch. And I can show you the tutorials I used and kind of the things I went through if you wanted to investigate going down that path, because it is work, but it's not infinite, especially since you can control exactly what it does.
And there's kind of PHP equivalents, and so
there are.
We'd have to decide. So for me, I would be more comfortable in PHP because that's what I've done before, and I've never done any Rails.
Well, to be fair, I actually built since for 7 and 7, I also had to build a web app component, because there were a couple Android developers. I built a PHP front end that uses the Rails backend. So there is a mixture of PHP and JSON API code. So I can show you that one too if you want, because then you could build it in like I forget what the library is called, but there's basically a library that lets you easily interact with JSON APIs in PHP. Yeah.
So it's all good, but it's just something like you said. This is like it's a crucial or it's an important decision. It creates a lot of work if you get it wrong.
Exactly. Cool.
And then define how it's going to live with considering that it will probably be backed by a server at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's it. Yeah. So that's it. That's my week.
I think that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So before we sign off, do you want to circle back to your? So I think you kind of said you would probably do 1.5. So you'll finish.
Yes.
But the yellow, you'll finish that one, and then you should definitely move on to the other one, but perhaps won't finish it.
Yeah, and I think the reason I brought it up was because they do kind of function in tangent. This first task was getting those preliminary mockups built, which functions a lot like you just showed me with your app, like kind of user story / mockups to kind of frame it. And then my next bit was basically fleshing out the gameplay model, which is kind of what you just showed for your tracking app as well. And it would be like, okay, like the way the revenue model would work ties directly into the gameplay model. Is there like a world map? Does it go based by levels? Are customizations in app purchases? Are like, whatever the hell the details are, like I kind of need to like map out all of those details. And since they tie in with the mockups, it's kind of they are inextricably linked. So I think I can definitely do at least a little bit of it because part of it also was looking at a few of the games that have given me inspiration and kind of mapping out their both gameplay models and revenue models and kind of seeing which one fits.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, so it won't be a to-do so much as a target task, I guess, like a task I hope to complete, but may not.
Yeah, no, that sounds fair.
Hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you've got any feedback, then please leave it in the comments below. And why not give us a like or a subscribe? You know you want to. See you next week. Bye.